I think we have Khulekani Skosana with the ANC Youth League back with us here on the show. Yes.
Thank you so
Perfect.
much for having us. Apologies for that. Someone was disturbing my line. I'm so sorry.
No problem at all. I understand the struggle, and just to ask you the question again, and for those who just joined the show, you were there in the Donbass when the referendums were happening, where the 3 regions assessed themselves, or 4 regions, to become a part of Russia. Now, in the U.S., of course, this has been widely panned as just a totally fake vote and something that was imposed upon these people. So I'm just curious, first and foremost, what your impressions were as someone who was there to observe these elections.
Again, thank you so much for having us, and greetings to your viewers and listeners. We appreciate the time. Look, the right to self-determination is enshrined in the statutes of the United Nations. I think the vote has been declared a very democratic way of resolving decisions that must be taken by a people. We think that the gun is not the correct way to resolve this issue, but the opportunity to vote for us was the greatest way that the people of Donbass could speak for themselves. Too often, you have political elites purporting to be representing the views of the people. And we went to the Donbass region to actually hear physically the views of the people and what they want, not what we hear on television, not what we are spoon-fed by media, but what the people themselves want. And what they want is the opportunity to vote and speak, and they did so overwhelmingly. I think also for us to mention is that since the departure of Ukraine from the Soviet Union, you then have Russian minorities in the Donbass region, and these people have been okay with being of Russian descent in Ukraine. However, seemingly the government of Ukraine has not found it acceptable that there are people of Russian descent in Ukraine, and therefore have cancelled the language, continuously persecuted these people and targeted them. And we are actually shunning Western media for its inability to express the genuine views of the people of Donbass. And for us as Africans who are victims of biased media throughout our struggle, we sympathize with any oppressed people in the world. And we think that this was an opportunity for them to express themselves, but also for us to hear from them on the ground, unbiased, no favor, no fear, directly from the people of Donbass. What is it exactly that they want? Not to hear from President Putin, not to hear from Zelensky, but the people themselves. And they've spoken. And I think that must be respected, because our intention and our position as a country and as a people is that of peace, and it's that of conversation, and it is that of self-determination. And I think if the United Nations truly wants to represent what is written in its documents, they are supposed to allow the people to express themselves.
It's really incredible how the parameters of thought on this issue in much of the global South is so different than what's being discussed in places across Europe and in the United States, or North America, I should say, where it's a very one-sided, it's not even a debate, it's just one side. It's pro-Ukraine, anti-Russia, pro-NATO, nothing else. And it's actually really important that we hear from voices from across Africa and other parts of the global South, because even in countries that are allied with the United States, people have even some, in cases, pro-Russian sentiments that in many ways date back to historical ties with the Soviet Union, and especially with what you're talking about, where the Western media and where the West stood on the issue of apartheid, for example. But I'm curious if you've seen any kind of pushback from the Americans. We see that, you're probably familiar with Victoria Nuland. She's quite famous when it comes to the issue of Ukraine and what happened in 2014. And now she's sort of been dispatched by the United States to try to get many African countries, particularly in Northern Africa, to back the American position and take an anti-Russian stance. And I'm curious if you see anything like that being successful across the African continent, or even in South Africa, have there been attempts by the US to try to pull South Africa in the direction of being on the American pro-NATO side? And what has been the response to that?
I don't think anyone should be pro any superpower. If we are to be pro anything as a people who believe in democracy, democracy, by the way, is Greek and it stands for by the people, for the people. And if anyone should speak, it's the people themselves. And how people speak anywhere in the world in a democratic process is through a vote, not through a gun. And we think that, I don't know this Victoria you speak of, but in Africa, as victims of oppression, we are on the side of all the oppressed people of the world. And what we are saying is that just because you are going to bombard us with your views on CNN and all these platforms, it doesn't mean that we are going to swallow them, especially after 400 years of oppression. European countries have not apologized for what they've done in Africa. They continue to attempt to undermine the sovereignty of African people. And that is why we subscribe to democracy, we subscribe to peace, and we subscribe to friendship. And we think that if anyone has the interest of the people of Donbass at heart, they should not sabotage the attempts of the people to speak for themselves. The people of Donbass don't get an opportunity to be on Western media. They don't get an opportunity to be on platforms such as this ones. And as beneficiaries of international solidarity ourselves, we would not be anywhere if people of the world did not speak on our behalf on what South Africa has been doing to our people, the former apartheid government. And we don't think that anyone should depend on television alone in terms of how they formulate their view. And there's a very famous song in America that says, the revolution will not be televised. And that's what exactly we found. You go to Donbass, you discover that Kyiv and the Ukrainian government are not innocent at all. They've been continuously attacking those people. I mean, you cannot say that you allow people to have their own view and self-determination, yet you kill their language. It's a fact that the Ukrainian government cancelled the Russian language in their curriculum and in their schools, and they continue to target and persecute. We know about the coup that took place in 2014, and nobody has been speaking about the attacks that the people of Donbass have been receiving from the Ukrainian regime, as much as it took a lot of time for the international community to understand our struggles as a people in Africa. Now, it is important for us as victims of oppression, of 400 years of oppression. I mean, we were put in slavery, we defeated slavery. We had colonialism, we defeated it. Now we know that there is hope against oppression. And anywhere we smell or sniff oppression, we will go there and we will be on the side of the people. We are not on the side of the West or the East, Russia or America. We're on the side of the people. We think that is very important. And that is what we went there to engage the people on. And honestly, what we found is refugee camps that have been bombarded by the Ukrainian regime. If you have a quarrel with Russia as a federation, then you should be targeting military installations. There's no justification by the Ukrainian government to attack ordinary citizens purely because they are of Russian descent. And this is what we have found, that there is ethnic targeting of Russian minorities. And as someone who is a victim of ethnic target, because I'm Black, I've been at the receiving end of oppression. I understand what it is to be a victim and to have nobody to speak for you. That is why at the beat of the drum, I went to Donbass without care and fear whether I'll be sanctioned or declared undesirable. Because even the Nelson Mandela that is celebrated in America today was once called a terrorist. So we are not going to be spoon-fed by Western media on what we should decipher. Just because they used to give instructions to our forebearers and dictate in our continent, they should not think that in 2022 they can dictate. And we are saying that we are on the side of peace and we are on the side of human preservation.
Because I think after your last answer, a really important sort of piece here and something that underpins this entire thing is this whole idea of a unipolar hegemony, that one country should just tell everyone else what to do. And I know that next year, 2023, South Africa is assuming the BRICS presidency. And, you know, I'm curious your thoughts about the importance of multipolarity, of a multipolar world, and what some of your hopes might be for the vision South Africa can bring to that table in a very prominent position, which is the BRICS presidency.
Just before I answer that question, this is exactly what we're talking about. I keep getting cut from the line because people know that I'm doing this interview and they are not happy about that. So they keep calling me. My sincere apologies. Our position as a country is that we want a multipolar world purely because America and Europe have chosen to use sanctions as weapons of war. And what we need to tell the people is that sanctions at the very end of it, they affect the people directly. If you've got a quarrel, I maintain, if you've got a quarrel with Russia, you then target military installations. But when you target civilians, your own civilians, it tells us that what they have been telling us, that you've been attacking them since 2014, is very true. And in terms of BRICS, we think that there must be a balance in the world, and nobody should have the right to punish people on the basis of their convictions and impartiality thereof. The US Congress has decided to vote on punishing African countries that have abstained, by the way, in the vote for the United Nations. Our country has continuously invited Ukraine on a proposal towards peace, but they've not wanted that. We've never seen this unprecedented amount of weapons that have been sent to Ukraine. Instead, in 2021 in Africa alone, you had more than 5 coups. And what do we receive? We receive water, and people come here to take Instagram pictures and to pretend as if they're in solidarity with the oppressed people of Africa. The grain that was in Ukraine and the grain that was in Russia has not arrived in Africa. They said that they want the grain to leave Odessa so that it can arrive in Africa, but not a single a truckload of grain has arrived in sub-Saharan Africa, which is most affected by this conflict. So we are not going to allow in 2022 the reversal of dictatorship and the continued plowing of our resources. People want Africa as a basket. If anyone is a donor in the world, it is Africa, because we feed all these countries, but we are being purported and viewed as desperate and hungry people. We are not. If we were hungry and poor, the West and Europe would not be coming here begging for our resources. And we want to say that we are part of BRICS, we support BRICS, and we want a multipolar world where no country can dictate to everyone else where they should go. And they can bring all the duress and all the pressure, but we are steadfast and we are determined that we will speak for ourselves, just like Nelson Mandela, who I maintain was once called a terrorist and today is celebrated. So we are not worried about what is referred to as Russia. We know that Russia is in the interest of the people. If Russia is willing to endure economic sanctions at the behest of defending the defenseless, then we will stand with the oppressed people of the world, and not limited to Palestine, Cuba, and Western Sahara. President Biden went to Tel Aviv, and he met with the president of Palestine. Before he landed back in Washington, Gaza was being bombed. We did not see any sanctions being imposed on Israel. Israel has continued to disrespect United Nations resolutions. So we've got a problem with the West and Europe that is selective and biased on which United Nations resolutions must be implemented. And I maintain we have seen an unprecedented amount of weapons going into Ukraine, but we continue to receive water bottles and rice here, and it's called solidarity. So if you are an American and you are on the side of peace, you'll take the initiative of hearing from the people of Donbass themselves what they want. You don't have to listen to Russia. You don't have to listen to America. Listen to the people. And that's why we went to the Donbass area. And we are looking forward to hosting BRICS in 2023. And part of the discussions we will have there is how we include young people in decision making and how we, as the third world, can participate in the discourse of the world. And we think that no more and no longer should Africa should be seen as a charity case. We don't want your charity. We don't want your humanitarian aid. We want you to respect our land and to respect our sovereignty and to stop plowing our mineral resources. And we want to say to the American people and progressive people of the world that if you stand with democracy, then you will stand with the people of Donbass who want self-determination. And that's our position as an organization.
Mm-hmm. Khulekani Skosana, the Chairperson of International Relations and Solidarity for the African National Congress Youth League, ANC Youth League. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time here in the Freedom Side.